Right, hello guys. Welcome to the track guide for Nürburgring 24 hour. Um, this is in the Porsche Cup, so I know a few people will probably be doing GT3, not the Porsche Cup, but I'm doing it in the Porsche Cup, so sod ya, you can learn from me in the Porsche Cup. So yeah, a little bit of a heads up first. Track temperature quite hot, 44 degrees. I've set it quite hot just for the reason that the hotter it is and the more used to it I can get, then when it is colder and grippier, it's going to feel way better rather than the other way around when you're so used to cold conditions and then it starts getting hotter and it's really slippery, then it's no good. So yeah, I like to practice in hot temperatures, get used to it and comfortable with it. And then when it is colder, when it comes to the race, then happy days. I mean, I should be feeling quite electric and nice and fast. So yeah, these conditions aren't great. These are not good conditions. Obviously, you can see everything on screen there. So yeah, let's go through the lap. I'll try and keep it as short as sweet as possible. The lap I did was a 30.7. Yeah, I think there's definitely still loads of room for improvement, more time. But as you can see, my optimal lap is a 30.0. So I'm not a million miles off anyway. I know zero point 0.7 of a second is in my book is quite a lot, but on this circuit it's not that far off. As you can see, quite a few purple sectors here. A few bad sectors, two tenth loss, but nothing major. So it's a fairly consistent lap. We'll find the mistakes anyway. But let's have a look. So here we go. Here goes. This is the longest lap review I'm going to ever do, but here we go. So coming down the straight, obviously I looking for the 150 as the road starts to curve. Looking to brake pretty much just before that 150 board. And weirdly, we don't want to be positioned on that far left on that white line. We want that car to be slightly over to the right hand side so we can brake in a straight line towards the left side because it curves. Okay, so braking in a sort of straight line but diagonal towards that left side, braking nice and efficiently at that sort of area, trying not to get the wheels to lock up, obviously in this car a bit easier to do so, and try and drive that car in a straight line with that steering wheel in a straight position so we can slow down nice and efficiently. Okay, yeah, now we've used that track on the far left, didn't utilise the far left, but it's not terribly important to get onto the curve or anything, but obviously getting that width will help you. Make sure we can get that car trailed down as we get the car turning in, and we want to make sure we maximize this curb. Okay, we can get 1x on this curb, so just be cautious, but we actually want to hop over this curb with really quite a slow car. We don't want much speed, using lots of steering input to try and stay to the right as much as possible. As soon as you carry too much speed and end up over here, this line is terribly awkward. So we want to make sure we open up this next left. Okay, so open this corner up as much as we can, and then tiny little dab of brake, turning in nice and early, touching a bit of the curb, really park it on the apex here, overslowed, okay, super slow at the speed on the apex, so you can crank that steering wheel over massively, okay, use loads of steering wheel hugely, get the car turned really quickly so you can open up the steering wheel really quickly and throttle down nice and soon and get that power down to 100% nice and early, okay. I don't want to see people carrying a higher minimum speed here with less steering input and then the car pushing wide and using more track, because it just means you're using the steering wheel for longer and understeering for longer and struggling to get 100% throttle sooner. Okay, I'd actually prefer to see the car being a little bit over slow, overuse the steering wheel in the middle, get the car pointing in a straight direction at the exit of the corner sooner so you can straighten your wheel up earlier, and then this throttle can come to 100% way earlier so you can get nice drive off the corner. And then in this area we like to then use the track on the far right. Okay, open that steering wheel to a straight position so it uses this area of the track, but yeah, we don't want to be running wide over here in this area over this direction. Okay, so coming up to the next area, we got this exit road on the right hand side, or the other layout of the circuit. We're pretty much braking as the road starts. You can brake a bit later, but it's a bit easy to brake a bit earlier, be more consistent. So yeah, braking at the start of that road, hitting that sort of high mid percentage of pressure and then bleeding down quite early, get the car turned in, get the car using this camber of the road. We're looking for like a mid to late apex of this corner, and then we're looking to stay fairly tightish off the exit. I don't want the car tight on the far left here, as in over here right now, just because to get there you are going too slow behind us. So make sure you utilize more track by running a bit wider, but not over here, because we will affect our next corner. So we want to be in that sort of mid to mid left of side of the circuit on the exit of this corner behind us. So then we can try and fight over to the left hand side with a teeny bit of braking, nice and like deep braking. And then this apex is really awkward. It's a really late apex, okay, super awkward to get, and it's really deep trail brake, okay, really late, really late, and deep trail brake as long as we can, and then delay that throttle to as late as we can, and then get that car driven out off the exit and let the car run wide, use all the circuit on the exit. Really hard to get that one right. It's very easy to either overslow it, or it's either easy to get the throttle on too early and understeer wide. So just be cautious of that. Okay. So we come up to, I think it's a Dunlop curve. Someone might correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Coming up to the Dunlop curve, you've got this grass patch in between the two AstroTurfs and the curbing here on the left. I'm looking to get the brakes done, or start the brakes at that grass patch, or the start of the grass patch, patch at least. And then we're looking to sort of brake diagonally into the nose of this corner. We don't want to run out wide over here. The reason being is, first of all, there's a lot of camber in this area. It will help the car pull you round, okay? First of all, we're looking to get nice and tight to this first part of the apex here, and then running deep in the middle of the track, running away from the apex with the trail brake still carried really deeply, and then get that car to overslowed in the middle here. So around about here, we're getting this car a little bit overslowed, and the car gripping up really well and coming back into the curb, to which then we can then start the throttle application, and then as the car comes back into this curb, and then we're then hoping to then get in towards this second later apex. So it's two parts of the apex to this, and then as well as we come into this second late apex, we should find ourselves being able to open our steering wheel up a lot sooner, which then helps us direct our throttle down flat out a lot earlier, and then let this car run out wide, use the track, use the runoff, use the curb on the exit. Okay. So coming up to the Schumacher S, this is really awkward. We don't want to be using this part of the curb. You can use the red and white part of the curb, but as soon as you sit the car up onto this part of the curb and try and turn in from this curb, it really just doesn't work. Can't get the car to turn in very well. It will not work very well at all for you. So try and avoid running up onto the curb. You can do it, go ahead, but I didn't find it very consistent. So consistency on this track is key, as I'm sure you are well aware. But yeah, utilising the red and white part of the curb is about right, and then turn in quite early, lift out the throttle, get that car to turn in nice and early, get up onto this curb. It does bounce you quite a bit awkwardly, but it allows you to cut some of the track, which then allows you to run out in towards this curbing, and as well use maximum amount of this curb as well. As you can see, chopping across all of that AstroTurf doesn't allow you to have a 1x, and then just try and have a straight line through it as much as we can. So as soon as we sort of pushing out wide here, we should get just pushed out to the exit in, and just straighten your wheel up and turn a little bit to the right, and then just let that car drive off the corner in a straight line. Let it run over to the white outside rather than strangling the car, hugging it tight to the right, and then slowly veer over to the right hand side on the exit here. Okay, but other than that, it's a really quick corner. Okay, so we come up to this next bend. We've got this exit road, or bit of tarmac on the right hand side, pretty much using the start of the tarmac as a brake marker. Okay, hitting them brakes nice and hard initially, bleeding down, fairly standard corner this one, utilising a lot of the curb here on the inside, turning in quite early, using lots of the inside curb, getting that car slowed down nicely, but we don't then want to run fully wide, because you can run wider and utilize some of this curbing on the exit, but we don't want to utilize too much of that, because then you're going to restrict yourself having a good corner for the next. On this lap, I didn't have a good this corner. I messed up, so you'll soon find that out. Okay, but we're looking to try and get the car over to the left hand side nicely, just a little bit of a lift and tiny bit of braking, and then get that car rolled into the apex. And we're looking for a nice late apex. Obviously here I just couldn't quite get the car turned in enough, couldn't quite get it to the apex, so we've ended up missing this apex, so we lost out on a couple of attempts there, okay. But in the end I still managed to get the car turned and rotated and got the throttle down. I just couldn't carry as much speed as I wanted to with the wider line, but we still ended up using the full width for the track. As you can see here, I'm right on the limit here, on the edge of the track, scraped a bit of gravel, but yeah, it doesn't slow the car down too much or at all, so we can get away with that. Go for it. All right, use the full width of that track. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense through there. Flat out through this section of corner. There's not much to say about it other than that. So then we come up to the chicane, really tricky chicane this one. I'm looking for the 100 board as a rough marker, but probably just before the 100 as a rough guide. So there you go, hitting the brakes nice and hard initially, and then that is actually quite early on the brakes here, okay, but it allows me then to hit the brakes initially hard and then bleed off nice and early, so I can get in this lighter pressure range earlier, and it allows the car to work really well, turn in really well and be really stable, and that is really what allows me to carry a lot of speed through here. I prefer to do that than try and brake a bit later and then trail higher, because it's just a bit awkward to get the car to turn in. We have to be very precise on the line here. Okay, utilising the best amount of curb on the inside here. I think you might be able to use a touch more than this, but I'm utilising this for now. I'd say just maximising curb usage is key through this section. It's very easy to pick up a 1x through these S bends, so just be cautious of that. But we do need to maximise the curbs. If you've got left side tyres over here, we're going to easily run wide out of this corner, and it's not going to help you at all. And then obviously as we come through this corner, we sweep through here and then turn into this right-hander. Again, utilising this curbing as best as we can, but it's very easy to pick up a 1x on this curb. I think I'm pretty much on the limit for a 1x here. Any further to the right, I think I'm going to pick up a 1x. So I'm right on the edge here, okay? But for sure, that's exactly what I wanted to see. And then driving through this corner on the throttle, okay? The car might get a little bit unstable on the exit here as you're carrying lots of speed. Let the car wash out wide, but not all the way. Don't be too lenient on the car and letting it go over here. We need to fight the car back over to the right hand side. So you can go up to the curb, but I wouldn't suggest running up on the curb and staying on it. I would pretty much run to the white line area of the curb to then fight the car back over to the right hand side nice and easily. And as soon as we start fighting the car over to the right, we're pretty much getting onto the brakes, but we're not braking too hard or heavy because we're trying to turn a lot of the time here. Bleed down into light trailing pressure, and then we're going for a wide entry, okay, avoiding this early apex, super wide entry, keep on going wide, and then all of a sudden the curb will start to appear, and we're aiming towards this sort of area of apex around this point now, okay. This is the apex marker we're looking for. Obviously I do not want you to hit the curb here, it really unsettles the car, so make sure you avoid the curb but get nice and tight to it at this point now. And then we're getting on that throttle. I tended to try and use a bit of a higher gear than normal here just to avoid too much wheel slip, because it's easy to get oversteer on the exit here, as you just saw. Even with the higher gear, you can see it's getting quite loose on throttle. And then I'd like you to not go all the way up to the wall here. I actually want you to leave a little bit of space between you and the wall at this moment right here, so you can then turn into the area where there isn't any wall and utilize some of this track on this right hand side. Getting on the brakes, I found nice and early and nice and light was way more easier, because it's so easy to run in with too much speed and understeer into the corner. And then we really want to get nice and tight to the apex, but do not hit it. I think this lap I hit it, so you'll see why it's negative, because I get up onto the curb and I just about brush the curb right now, and it bounces up and throws me to the right, and then I create an awful amount of understeer and the car's not working and I can't throttle very well. So I definitely lost quite a chunk of time in this corner too. But if I managed to just miss that apex, that would have been brilliant. Again, we're looking for quite a wide entry line. Do not run too wide over here. I mean, it's great to use more track and go wider here, but don't try and turn in really late, because we missed the camber of the road. As you can see here, it's quite flat, okay. I mean, there's some camber, there's not a lot as what it is down here. There's lots of camber to pull you into the corner here, so use that to your advantage so you can carry more speed into the entry and let that car pull you in. the track pull you in, and yeah, aim to get towards this apex without hitting the curb, and you've got a really nice line through that corner. Okay, obviously you can run out wide and you can sort of go up on the curb there. It's a bit sketchy sometimes, but you can use it if you need to. Then flat out through this section. Come to here, little lift off, and early turning is key here. You try and turn a little bit later to open the corner up, and we missed the camber of the road again. So turn in nice and early. Just again, avoid the curb on the inside. Get nice and tight to it if we can, but avoid the curb. Little mini lift and back on the throttle, carry the speed. Let the car drift over. That's absolutely fine. Okay. As we then come through this section, flat out all the way down here, over to the right hand side, ready for this sort of awkward left right left right right left right right left right right section. Okay, really complex section coming up now, so this is really important. So medium braking pressure because we're sort of starting to turn at this moment, and then avoid the curbs, absolute avoid the curb here. Open up the left as we can, go through here, try and stay to the left as we go through this curve as much as we can with the speed that we've got. And again, keep on trailing that sort of mid-light pressure through the corner, turning into this curve, and then again avoiding the curb on the inside here. Do not hit the red and white curve, it bounces the car really aggressively. I managed to get nice and close there without touching it. And then, yeah, it's really awkward to get any grip on the exit of this corner, so you want to be almost a little bit slower in this part of the corner than you maybe feel like you need to, so you can then get the throttle down nicely and not suffer with too much understeer on the exit. Okay, we don't want it to be running all the way out here on this far right because we need to pull the car over to the right hand side a little bit. I don't expect you to be on the far right here because to get there you have to be too slow behind you. So yeah, having this right side of the middle of the track in this positioning is great, but turning into this pretty much flat out on the throttle, maybe a touch of lifting. You can see I'm sort of scraping a little bit of the curb. You can use a little bit of the half of the curb, but do not jump the curb here. The car gets really unsettled. So you can see I'm using a touch of the curb, but not massive amounts. And then trying to hug the left side of the track. Back on the brakes again for a little dab of the brakes to get the car to turn in. And here we want to turn in and proper cut a lot of this curb. You can get a 1x on this curb, so be careful of that. But if we can set our tyres on this area of curb rather than the red curb, way better. If you hit the red curb, it will just bounce you off to the left. If you can jump over the red and white curb and sit it on this AstroTurf part of the curb, brilliant. We want to hug that part of that so you can then hug to the right and stay to the right more. If we miss that curb, we're going to end up over here, and this corner is going to be a pain in the butt. So yeah, getting this track positioning on the right side by using that curb behind us is key for this corner here. And yeah, pretty much we're trailing all the way through it as well. We're not really throttling through this corner. It's trailing through the corner, and then we're setting ourselves up to stay to the right hand side as much as we can to then trail for this corner, get it turned in, and then get into this corner. Here though, I would like to try and avoid this curb if we can. I hit this curb on this lap and it bounced the car a little bit aggressively and pushed me over to the right hand side. So just be aware that if we can, we can try and stay here, open this corner up and turn in a little bit later, and then come a little bit wider, and then you won't bounce across the circuit and we'll have a bit more grip, and then you can let the car run wide and use this curb if you wish, as long as we can fight it back over to the left hand side in time, ready to then get on the brakes one more time, slow it down with a nice light trailing pressure, not too heavy, and then again this time we want to use the curb where the AstroTurf area is. You can jump on top of that concrete. I didn't get on the full of it, so I've only used a little bit of it. I could have used a little bit more this particular lap, but yeah, it allows us to then stay to the right hand side a bit more. As you can see, because I didn't use the full of it, I've ended up running a little bit too wide here, and it's ended up affecting my exit through this corner. So if our car was a wheel width to my right here, I could turn into this corner a lot easier without using aggressive amounts of steering input and then struggling for a little bit of grip. But in the end, I still get through it okay and managed to carry good speed, so it wasn't terrible. I'm obviously struggling to get my throttle down and being a bit cautious and overusing the steering wheel, but I managed to get through it, and we get through cleanly without a 1x, obviously running right on the edge there as well. Alright, so coming down the straight, and then we come up to the brow of the hill. This is quite an awkward area, but you can go flat out over the hill. The car will catch a bit of air, as you can see. It lifts up in the air. Release out of the throttle. I don't think I brake. No, I don't brake. Just release out of that throttle. Get the car turned in. I do hit the curb here. We don't want to hit the big chunk of it. if you bounce over that and maybe touch a bit of grass, you're going to bounce quite awkwardly and throw yourself left. So be cautious of using too much curb again. I think this is the key about this circuit. Sometimes too much curb is a real pain on this circuit. All right, so be careful with that. But then being able to reapply throttle, carrying as much speed as possible. You might not find yourself being able to get to that apex. That is okay as long as we don't run wide and use the grass. Okay, obviously you want to get pushed all the way to this point without running wide on the grass. So it's just basically maximizing the speed with timing of the lift. Okay, obviously you lift a little bit more if you've got a heavy car with cold tyres, or if you've got overheated tyres or whatever, you'll be lifting a little bit more. And when the conditions are cooler, you probably find it's almost flat. It'll be like a little lift. Okay, so yeah, just sort of time how much lifting you need to do through that corner depending on conditions and stuff. Okay, as we come up flat out all the way down this section, we come up to the curve down, which is really interesting corner. Pretty much like a little lift of the throttle, which is not always needed, but it just helps you stabilize the car a bit better, helps you get the car on the inside here, because we don't want to be washing too wide here. We want to be able to stay to the left on the exit of the corner, because we need to be on the left side of the circuit ready for this corner coming up. You can get on the throttle through on the exit of the corner, but you won't find you using much of it. You use it up to 100 for a moment and then off, and then getting on the brakes. I find myself, as the track changes, we've got a tarmac change over here where the curve ends. As long as you can find yourself getting on the brakes before that, then we should find ourselves being able to get the car slowed down. As you can see, I'm making sure the brake is done quite early here to avoid myself locking up or having any moment. Sometimes better to brake a bit early, having that bit more consistency, and then being able to bleed off a little bit earlier to make the car more stable. Okay, and that's exactly what I've done here. Trailed off nice and early so I can carry less speed into the corner without overslowing too much, but having good stability. Okay, and then as this apex, we're looking for a really late apex, turning in towards the middle area of the track, but then coming into the apex a lot later and finding a late part of this curb. Okay, as you can see, I'm coming into this apex pretty late now. Okay, met the curb about now, and get that throttle down nice and hard and aggressively, and try and open that wheel up, let the car run wide, and you can let the car hop up on top of this curb and use this AstroTurf part of the, or concrete part of the curbing as well, and then yeah, let carry as much speed as we can with that down here. And this is really important because down this straight it is really fast, so we can carry a lot of speed down here. So we're flat out all the way through that section behind us, flat out coming up to this area here. This curve coming up here is also flat out, but we're pretty much, as soon as we get through it and on the other side of it, there's not a long period of time before we're then pretty much getting off of our throttle, adding a little bit of brake. As you can see now, we just about got through it, off the throttle, adding a bit of brake, and I actually advise to brake nice and early here, not too late, because as soon as you try and brake late here, it's really awkward to get the car to turn. Brake nice and early, not too heavy, and then get the car turned in really early, turn in to this corner really early, and we want to chop this curve. If you're missing this curve, okay, your car's over in this direction, we end up pushing over to the right hand side of the circuit over there, and we end up having a very awkward line through the rest of it. So we want that car to be chopping across this curb. Yes, it's bouncy and it's a bit awkward and it feels a little bit rough when doing it, but it still manages okay, and it's the position, track positioning that is key. We now got this car on this left side of the middle of the circuit, which allows us to then open up this corner here. And we're pretty much trailing through this corner to get the car to grip up, downshifting throughout nice and smoothly and calmly, and then we might find then releasing out the brake through here to then add a teeny bit of throttle between these two corners. It's not for long, and it's pretty much, I don't think I even get full percentage of throttle, because by the time you sort of add that throttle, you're back on the brakes again as we run over to this area, and then we want to sort of straight line it on the brakes over to this like a wider area so we can open up the next. But really, I'm not too fussed about utilizing the far right hand side of the circuit, because to get over there, you have to carry more speed to be over that direction, and then by the time you carry more speed, you've ended up missing your apex anyway. So I find it actually a bit not really that important to get over the far right hand side, but we don't want the car hugging the curb the whole way through here. Okay, we want the car to run away from this curb in the middle and run into the middle of the circuit so we can open up this corner. But yeah, trailing down, getting the car nice and slow, avoiding the curbs through this part of the corner. Okay, Really important. And then try and open up the corner. Don't run too wide on the exit of this corner. We want to be in this sort of mid to left side of the middle on the exit, so we can open up this next right hander. A little bit of throttle, release, and then get the car turned in, and then back on the throttle. Avoid the curb on the inside. Do not touch that curb, otherwise the balance gets really upset. And then on the exit, you can then use the curb on the exit as long as we've got that steering wheel straight at the time, okay, which should be happening because we should be carrying lots of good exit speed with opening that steering wheel up nice and early. Okay, flat out down here, and then coming up to this corner. I don't know why on this lap I decided to downshift when I'd been practicing without downshifting, and it was way quicker not downshifting here, but yeah, carrying a lot higher speed through this corner. It's just very light, early light braking, not too much, just a very nice carry, like calm trail brake all the way through like a late apex. Bang on the throttle on the exit, and then let that car push out nice and wide using all the track on the exit. And then as soon as the car's pretty much got in a straight line and on the right side of the circuit, we're getting off the throttle and then returning straight back to the brakes again. Again, get the brakes done nice and early here. It's so easy to overshoot and like miss your braking zone and run wide here. Just don't be scared of braking out a little bit early and then just bleeding down into the lighter pressure a bit sooner. Then you can get this car turned in. And then, yeah, do not miss the camber of the road here. As soon as we're out here, we miss all of the grip in this tight curb here. Again, avoid the curb. Do not touch the curb on the inside. It's absolute death. Okay, and then we can run a little bit wide over here. Try to be a little bit cautious running too wide, especially up onto the curb. You can see I'm getting close to it. Again, we do not want to hit it. All right, it's obviously it's more advantageous to be running a little bit more to the middle of the circuit, so you can turn into this corner nice and easily flat out. But I optimize carrying a little bit more speed by carrying higher speed out of the exit of this corner, running a little wider. I think I've run a little bit too wide on this particular lap, lost a little bit of time by pushing a bit too much, and then causing myself struggling to go 100% throttle earlier. It'd been better to run as wide. Okay, so run wide, but maybe not as wide as this. Maybe a wheel width to our left would have been about right. But again, I don't want a car all the way over here because it's pointless. You've lost too much time behind you. Okay, so flat out through this curve once we've got the nice line, okay, which there we go, and then we let the car push all the way over to the left hand side of the circuit, stay on the left side of the circuit. And again, this one's really awkward brakes because it's downhill braking. It really catches people out. It's very easy to overshoot and run deep, so I found just get on the brakes nice and early, using that mid sort of pressure, and then you can bleed off the brakes because we do find ourselves turning in quite early here. Reason being, the camber of the road. Look at the camber of the road. There's lots of camber in this road to help you turn. The main problem is though, you don't want to be aiming for this apex. If you hit this apex, you're only going to start running wide afterwards. Okay, we want to be running in this sort of darker tarmac area, as you can see here, in the middle area of the track, and then coming in with a deep trail, and then come back in for this second late apex. And then at this point we should have a nice directed throttle to 80% range, then straighten your wheel up, then direct 100% on the exit. Let the car run wide, let the car use the curbing on the exit. You can use all that curb, pop up on top of that, and then jump back over to the right hand side. You've still got enough time to get over to the right. So we come up to this chicane, should be flat out. You might find, which I do, a little bit of confidence lifting is about key. So you can see a little bit of throttle releasing just to help me get the nose into the corner, because if you turn in too late here and start missing the camber of the road, the car will not turn in, it will not pull you around, and then you end up understeering and running into that barrier on the exit. So key thing really is just, I sometimes find it's just releasing a tiny bit of throttle, turn in nice and early, make sure you're going to get this car into this apex. Just avoid turning in too early that you're going to bounce on the curb. We want to miss the curb just like I have done here, but really we are trying to then get that throttle down nice and early and hard to then go through this corner. It is flat out if you can nail it, but just make sure the line is perfect. As soon as we miss a bit of that camber in the road, or we miss the or if you hit a curb, it's game over really, trying to go through there flat out. Okay, so a little confidence lift doesn't hurt anybody, maybe a couple of hundredths maybe, but not too much, right? And then really awkward corner coming up. Now this is one of my bugbear corners of Nürburgring. I absolutely hate this corner coming up, but we find ourselves running wide off the exit of that corner with the speed. early brakes here, super light early brakes. Again, I think it's a common theme here. We want to make sure they're super stable through this track, and yeah, really light. We don't want to overslow the car, but we want to make sure we're nice and stable and we can have plenty of grip and speed at the same time. Okay, speed is key, but it's so easy to misjudge this. All right, we find ourselves coming into this sort of first apex. Okay, hug this first apex nice and tight. If you run wide, again we miss the camber of the road over there and we generate lots of understeer when we're out there. So stay nice and tight to this curb, and then you should find yourself then reapplying your throttle between the two curbs, and then the car then started tracking wide off of that second curb. There's three curbs to this, and the third one we don't end up getting close to, which is this one. Okay, by that time we were running wide and then pushing all the way out to the grass and then just about keeping on track on the exit here. Right, I'd say this lap was really good through here, but it's not easy to do this. Okay, so yeah, what width here, turning in with a light, super light trail. Try not to overslow too much. Carry the brake as deep as possible, and then past this first apex, on throttle between two, hugging that second apex and then running wide off the second apex, and then pushing all the way out to the exit to the grass area here, avoiding the third apex. Okay, so as we got pushed out to the far left hand side of the circuit, it's perfect position ready for this next one. Here, nice and hard on the brakes here, and then trailing off early, get into the lighter pressure early because we've got to do a lot of turning while braking, so we want to make sure we brake nice and hard here, nice and efficient in this area, then bleed down so we're not then overslowing a car or causing any lockups. And then we want to just miss this curb. It's very important to get super tight to it. As soon as you're like a wheel width to our left, it just means you're going to be further to the left on the exit here, which is going to kill you. So you want to get nice and tight to the right, but avoid the curb, because if you hit it, it bounces you and throws you left. So it's very, very precision driving through here. And then try and then keep the car to the right as best as we can. Obviously, I don't expect it to over here, because you will not be able to get the car there with the speed that we're carrying behind us. Okay, but and as well, if we're out here, you're going to miss the camber of the road, which is down here. There's a big dip in the corner here to help the car turn, and you will find at this point the car is still slightly fast, so you can reapply a bit of pressure between these two corners as we straighten our wheel up between the two corners. You straighten the wheel, apply a bit more pressure, and then again bleed down in as we get into this apex or turning into this part of the curb, because it gets the wheels get very unloaded and it gets really easy to unlock a wheel. Okay, we then find ourselves trailing in, and we get tight to this first apex. Okay, and then the speed of the car that you're carrying is still too much that the car then gets pushed wide away from that curb. But then as you get into the dip here, the car grips up massively with this trail brake that you've got on, and the car starts to turn really quite quickly and rapidly, and starts then coming back into this second apex curb, which is key to get nice and tight to. Again, do not hit this curb. We do not want to hit that curb. It's absolutely killer. And then the next thing I found was then, as you're applying your throttle, I found a nice short shift through this corner before applying throttle. Helped you get better traction out of the corner, rather than trying to get the power down and starting to get traction control kicking in, or in this case wheel spin and then spinning out or having problems there, or overheating tyres. Okay, so as you can hear, let's have a listen. You can hear I've just started the throttle and then upshift quite nice and early to avoid any wheel slip. Okay, but yeah, nice and deep trail, and then finding the second apex, two parts to that corner. Okay, applying that throttle, as I said, short shift up through the gears to help you get the traction, and then through here try and avoid the curb. I did touch the curb here and got a little bit bouncy, but it wasn't too bad. And look, at the end of the day, it's flat out through here, and it's not that bad running wide here, so it's not terrible if you do clip the curb, but try and avoid it. It makes it life a lot easier. The car's more stable as well, and less chance of wheel spin or anything happening to you as well, right? So coming up towards this corner, we want to get the brakes done. Again, I found really early is the key to making sure we don't run in with understeer, because it's so easy to do so, especially with these conditions in this car. It's not easy to have much grip. So we've got the exit road over there, the curb ending over here. I'm looking between really where the corner curves and then it goes straight. I'm basically going pretty much halfway between uh, the end of the curb and where it starts to curve. So it's around about here is my rough marker as a brake. Let's have a look. There you go. Maybe a little bit before that, okay? Just after the car starts to straighten up on that curve, okay? Braking nice and early. You can brake quite hard. We need to get the car slowed here because it's quite an awkward corner and we want to park the car here. We don't want to carry too much speed on the exit. It's so easy to understeer wide on the exit of this corner. So just try and get the car a little bit overslowed, really. Get the car into this apex. Again, try and avoid the curb like I've done here, nice and tight against the curb, but avoid hitting the big part of the curb. It's going to bounce you, and it's going to throw you right with loads of understeer, and it's not going to work here at all. The other issue here is it seems to go off camber on the exit slightly, so you want to make sure you're a little bit overslowed on the apex, so you can then start directing your throttle. Even on this lap, when I overslowed the car and had a car that's quite slow, I'm still suffering with a bit of understeer on the exit, so it's really easy. I don't want that car to be pushing out wide up onto that curb, because it's super hard then to get the car to turn over and pull over back to the left side of the circuit in time, ready for the right hander up here. Okay, so you can see, even though I was a little bit overslowed on the apex, with a deep trail as well, and the throttle timing quite nicely, I still struggled with a bit of understeer. So you could maybe say you could get that car slowed even a little bit more, so you can then direct the throttle on even better off the exit of the corner, and maybe stay a little bit tighter as well, so we can get to the left side of the circuit better. But in the end, I still got this positioning ready for the right hander. And then this one, because it's uphill and it's quite a hill, we don't realise how steep this hill actually is. The brakes are quite late and not that heavy, okay? To be honest with you, I broke quite early on this particular lap. I hit the brakes and I've already bled off, and I've already pretty much released completely already. So I definitely suggest for future, if I'm looking to improve my laps even more, I'll be braking a little bit later and then trailing a little bit more. But the brakes aren't heavy at all. Just for the fact we're going up the hill, speed comes off the car naturally anyway. But get nice and tight to the apex, but avoid the curb. Again, if you're not tight to the apex here and you're over a little bit wide over here, there is camber pulling you down, but there's not as much camber in the road as there is tight to the apex. There's lots of grip in the mid tight to the apex, but do not hit the curb. Very, very important. Do not hit the curb there. It bounces you awkwardly and horribly out the exit. And we want to make sure we get a nice throttle off the exit this corner, and directly without understeering wide with too much momentum. We want the throttle directed nice and hard. Open the steering wheel up nice and early to get that 100% down nice and soon. Let the car run wide, use a bit of the curb on the exit if you wish, so we can carry lots of speed down this straight. Okay, this is fairly longish straight, so make sure you carry as best exit speed you can. This little kink is flat out. Okay, try and avoid the curve, really get tight to it, but no need to hit it, because it will bounce you across the circuit, which we don't want. We actually want to stay to the left, but nice and tight to the curve here. There is camber again, so it pulls you around the circuit. Just means there's less work for the tyres to be doing, and let the track pull you around. Okay, a bit like a roller coaster. Let the track help you turn more, rather than you doing all the work with the steering wheel with loads of understeer over here. And then as well, you're tight to the left side, ready for the corner ahead, rather than being in the middle of the track over here. You've got a problem. You've got to fight it to the left while trying to then brake at the same time. Okay, so coming up to this corner, you've got the Yokohama sign, and there's like a darker rubber area of track around about here, and really we are looking to be braking pretty much at the start of that darker rubber area. You can brake just afterwards, but it's a bit easier to brake at the start of the darker rubber area, but it's a bit before the Yokohama sign as a rough guide, so it's about now. There we go. Hitting the brakes nice and hard here. We've got a lot of speed carried from behind us, okay? But again, we don't want an early apex here, okay? But we don't want a really wide line on the entry because of the camber. So we find ourselves turning into the middle area of the track quite early. So we're turning into this mid area of line quite early, but we're avoiding that early apex down here, and then running the middle of the circuit with a deep trail all the way to then find that second late apex. This corner though, I did end up running a bit deep. I've then ended up getting a little wide, and I've missed this apex, which is really important. I think this sector I lost. I don't know which one it is. I think I lost maybe. I'd have thought it'd have been around this one, but I thought I lost quite a bit. Might have gained a bit somewhere else on another section, but I think this corner I lost definitely a tenth or two just alone here, so definitely not quite good. But if we're trailing that brake in the mid part of the circuit and then get the car to come back down into this second or later apex, direct the throttle on nice and hard out the corner and let the car push out wide with a directed throttle on. Okay, even though obviously I've run wide of the apex, I've generated the grip with the deep trail, used the camber to help the car pull me round, and directed that throttle on nice and hard, nice and early, so I can then open my steering wheel up nice and quickly so I can get down this straight. And this straight is really long. Actually one of the longest straights apart from the back straight, which will come up later on. So yeah, we can be flat out all the way through. Just take the shortest distance line all the way through this section. Basically shortest distance line until we get to about here. We're then letting the car run over to the right side. I caught a bit of grass here, a bit lazy to be honest with you, but using this far right hand side to then turn into this curve, just utilizing the minimum amount of steering input as possible. Avoid the curb again, do not hit that curb, okay, but then yeah, minimizing steering input flat out, okay. Try not to be too aggressive with the steering wheel. I'm going to keep that like speed as high as possible through this section. Flat out all the way though, coming through this area, and then we come up to this point. We're then kind of avoiding this curb on the left, sorry, pretending it never exists. So we're kind of hugging this right hand side here now, okay, and then you're seeing that curb on the left. We're ignoring that curb. We do not go for that curb. Run wide, let the car miss that curb completely and go over towards this sort of fake curb, the sort of tarmac area, concrete area over here on the right hand side, and we want to get as far right as possible here. And then we come up this corner, it's a dab of brake, very small with one downshift, get the car slowed nicely, get it turned in with lots of speed and momentum, nice and tight to the curb. Do not hit the curb again. This is super important on this corner. If you touch that curb here at this high speed, the car just bounces violently and understeers straight into that wall. It's so easy to crash on this corner. I had a couple of resets just on this in this session from this corner alone because I'm trying to push too much. Either caught the curb and bounced across the circuit, or I just tried to carry a bit too much speed and understeered wide and got caught on the grass and ended up in the wall. Okay, super hard to get it right here to maximize at least, but key really is super light braking, get the downshift done, trail in, and then as soon as you get the car turned in, go for that throttle nice and hard and aggressively, and just pray you're not going to understeer too much with too much speed. We find ourselves probably slightly missing this apex because you're carrying so much speed, the car's running wide and pushing you all the way over, and then getting the car pushed all the way to this exit curb. As you can see, I'm pretty safe here. I've got plenty of grip to not be worried about running too wide. So on the safer side, so there's maybe a little bit of time on the table, but for sure not masses. So it's better to be safe than it is to be send it and be sorry. Okay. So moving over to the left-hand side of the track, you've got a bit of a crest here, and we don't want to be on the far left here. We want to be angled diagonally to the crest, basically, to then meet the white line at the crest. So we want to be then meeting the white line at the crest, and then on the far left side of the circuit then turning into this right. This is really imperative to make sure you have this far left positioning for this corner. If you are wheel whip to our right, you aren't going to be able to go through this corner flat out, because this corner is flat out. You can see quite a hard aggressive steering input. I'm flat out on the steering wheel. Avoid the curb if we can, because it will bounce you and throw you off circuit. As you can see here, I'm right on the limit of track usage in the sense of far left side of the circuit here, and far right without the curb here, and then far left side on the exit, and that was flat out. So if you are flat out but with a line not quite perfect on the entry, you're not going to be able to go flat out, or a line that you end up hitting the curb on the inside, you're not going to be able to go flat out. So it's a very precise line to make sure you can do that flat. Okay, and then moving over to the mid part of the circuit, which seems weird. Okay, not far left, but we want to sit in the middle of this part of the circuit on the exit here, and then find yourself getting on the brakes nice and early before we're getting towards this curb up here. You can brake later here, but I found it so easy again to lock up the wheels and push on wide, because the track unsettles in the braking zone. There's lots of like bumps and areas that the car can unload tyres, therefore easily make the wheels lock up, especially in the Porsche Cup. So I found it a lot easier to get the brakes done a bit earlier. I mean, if you've got any reference, I mean, you've got the blue right, and you're probably not going to see that in the car, but not a good chunk before the start of the curbing over there, okay? And then when we're in the middle of the track, we're then aiming to then meet the sort of curb, but not hitting it where it sticks out the most over here in the middle, okay? And then trying to sort of curve a little bit to the left. You can see I'm using a little bit of left steering input here to then try and open the corner up a little bit more so I can go a bit to the left so I can open up the right hander here. If we were like hugging this line or staying on the left side of the circuit, you're just going to end up straight, and then you're going to end up getting pushed over towards this area of circuit here, and then this line's going to be terrible, okay? So make sure you try and open up and turn a little bit to the left, and like I say, be in the middle of the track over here so we can turn into this with a little bit of curve in the braking. Try not to curve too much because you won't be able to brake, okay? But having a teeny bit of steering to the left, trying to open up this corner. Getting the brakes done and trailing down, I found again using the gear to slow myself down, and then as I'm getting on the power and then doing a short shift up the gears to avoid too much wheel spin, because it is actually quite tight here, and the corner keeps on going on the exit, so it's very awkward to try and end up like carrying good speed, and also wheel spin is quite easy to do if you're carrying high revs in the lower gear. Okay, so for sure the key here, getting it slowed down, getting down nice and tight to this first apex, and almost trying to get the car to then hug the apex a bit, and then get the throttle on as the corner starts to tighten up, and this sort of orange marker board on the barrier here starts to appear. We're then pretty much getting the throttle down and then starting to run away from the curb, and that's not too much of a problem. The only reason we don't want to be staying tight to the curb is because we can carry more speed running wider. Okay, it would be nicer to stay tight so you can just go in a straight line out the exit, but we need to carry more speed and let the car run wider and use the track on the exit over here. So once the cars run nice and wide over to this far left, we then start coming up to the carousel. I'm just going to do one check that it's still recording. Yes, it is. 45 minutes in, and we've still got a good part of the lap, so it's going to look like an hour review. Let's have a look there. So coming up to the carousel, straight line this section as much as we can, and then as we're looking for this bit that sticks out. Okay, there's a little bit that sticks out there, kind of heading towards that in a straight line. Okay, we're braking a little bit before it. Okay, as you can see, a bit before it, nice and hard initially, and then bleed off early because again the track starts to have dips and lots of bumps. It's very easy to unload tyres and start locking up into the entry of the carousel. So trail into the light pressure nice and early, which is why you broke quite early, okay? And then get into the carousel. Don't want to get into it too early. You can see I'm kind of like, you don't want to be on the far left, you want to be on this right side where the red and white curving is ending, and you want to sort of enter into the curve as it starts to really turn. Okay, we don't want to be entering it down here into it here because you just start pushing up wide. Okay, if we enter it here, we can then let the trail brake and then the camber of the carousel start to pull you around like a roller coaster. As soon as you start trailing into the carousel and you get onto the banking of the carousel like this, you're pretty much releasing out your trail brake completely and then letting the carousel do the pulling into, like, giving you the grip and turning for you. Okay, you let out your trail brake pretty much now. I mean, I'm carrying it a little bit too much already still, but there we go, it's released. And then getting on the throttle. The throttle here now goes against what I've always said. It's just because of the high banking area of this corner, it just instigates this. We do not want to run out of the banking here. As soon as we run out of here, you're knackered. There's no grip. I'm sure everybody knows that. But to maintain yourself through this corner with speed and momentum, we have holding a half throttle, hold half throttle, hold the half throttle, staying on the banking, staying on the banking, staying on the banking, and then kind of then like as you're getting out of the exit of this banked area, we're then starting to direct the throttle down and then trying to then jump out this corner with as straight a steering as possible. If you get out of this bit where you hop out of the carousel with loads of steering input on, you're going to get real loose, probably spin. Okay, try and make sure you open your steering wheel up to a straight position as you hop out, because as you can see, I'm getting a little bit loose with oversteer on the exit here. Manageable, but it's a little bit slidey. But for sure, be cautious of trying to be too too much steering input while throttling out of that carousel. Okay. So coming up to one of my favourite sections of this track, flat out all the way up to here, hugging the right hand side of the circuit as we come up to this curve, and this is flat out. So we turn into this flat out through this curve, then let the car run out wide, get the car pushed over to the right hand side. Because it curves consistently, it's really awkward. You don't want to be on the far right, but sit it into this area so you can then brake into the far right hand side where the curve is over here. So you can see applying that brake. It's not heavy at all, really light. Then trailing off, getting the car turned in nice and early again, because the camber of the road helps you turn in. So turn in nice and early, trail into this corner. Avoid the curb if you can, please. Avoid the curb, but do not run wide off the exit of this corner. We want to be slightly slow on the exit of this corner, so we are in the mid to mid left, really, left side of the middle of the circuit, just like we are here. Okay, and then try and turn in a little bit later to this curb here, because I think I hit this curb on this lap from memory. Let's have a look. Looks like I do, heading towards it, because as soon as you hit this curve like I am now, you see the car bounce left, and then it gets really out of shape. And in fact, I have a big moment of oversteer and a massive save and a massive slide, and no good for speed, but yeah, it looks cool. Alright, not right, and there's definitely a couple of attempts lost from doing this, but for sure you can see why the curbs are absolute death when you use them. So yeah, having this width here is key, but turning a little bit later. But again, you want to get nice and tight to this curb, like I've been doing in a lot of other corners, but not hitting it, because if you're running out wide here, there's no grip either. But if you hit the curb, it bounces you left very, very catastrophically, like it's done in this lap. Alright, but we let the car run out wide, get the car up on top of this curb, just like this, straddling pretty much the full width of it, so you can then brake on this curb, okay, trailing down the pressure, and then turning it in again quite early, but we want to middle of the track. We don't want to get into the apex really early here, but we don't want to be out wide trying to take a wide line. You want to go into the middle of the track nice and early, and then finding a second late apex, which is around about here. Okay, you can brush a bit of the curve like I've done there, which is okay, but don't run fully wide here. You want to sort of open it up so you can then move over, so you can turn over to the left hand side. It's easy to end up like running fully wide onto the curve up here, and then on that curve you then push out wide and you push over here. The crest stops you from turning. You end up all the way over here on the far right, and then you've got to fight it over to the left, which is really difficult to do. So by not running quite as wide and having a little bit of space between you and the curb to turn into this curb is key. And this is all flat out though, so just remember that it's nice and easy really, but it's a little bit of a tip for this part of the circuit. So now we're on this far left. This corner is really fast, and you can turn into it pretty much flat out on the throttle, but you want to start releasing out your throttle and then probably start getting on the brakes just after it, okay? It is flat out, and you can do it flat out, but you will run too much to the left, and that is going to affect what we need to do through this next corner, okay? This next left-hander is also very fast, that you can go through it pretty much with just a lift, okay? But it is not what we want, because we want to then miss this sort of apex. We want to get tight and close to it, but we want to miss it weirdly with a trailing brake, so the car can pull tight now off the exit of the corner. We do not want to run wide off of this apex, okay? We want to stay tight off the exit of it. Stay nice and tight and following this white line here, and then have enough grip that the car can pull you back onto this curb and get up onto this concrete area of curb. This is imperative. As soon as you are wide by half a car, or even over here, this corner is a nightmare, okay? But when you're in this positioning with this width, this corner is beautiful. Once you get it right, it feels so nice, and you'll thank me later for it once you start to do this line, okay? You sit this car up onto this concrete area here, and then we can find ourselves pretty much turning into this pretty much flat out. You can see a little safety lifts there, but you can turn into this curve. Oh, turn into this curve using again, all the concrete on the right hand side without getting the 1x, and then the car should be pushing you violently left because you've got so much speed, and then you just about stay on track here by sitting it on the curb on this area now. Okay, whew, there we go. That's a real good section now, but here we go. Let's go through the next part. We're getting on the brakes, mid percentage pressure, not too heavy, not too hard, bleeding down nice and early, getting this turned into a late mid part of the apex. And again, we don't want it to run massively wide. We want to be in that sort of mid area of the track on the exit, mid to left area of the track on the exit, so we can then fight it back over to the right hand side, ready then for our left hander, where we do a nice light trail brake early. Okay, just getting down one gear to get it turned into this corner, tight to the curb again, really tight to it without hitting it, run wide off of that, and then start coming back on throttle into this area. Okay, this is really key that you make sure you run wide off of this, but enough to then come back into this late apex, and you're looking to kind of meet this concrete area of track again. Okay, really key to use this concrete bit of area of track. I don't quite get it, and I'm understeering a little bit wide, and I've ended up a little bit wide. I'd like my left side tyres on the concrete here, so I have a better width for the corner ahead, but I've still got okay width. Could be better, but it's okay. And then really late apex through, I'm pretty sure this is YouTube corner, or the next is YouTube corner. But yeah, making sure we can then carry good speed, using the camber to help you pull you around, but a late apex here, and then get the throttle on, and then run as wide as we can on the exit here. Without the 1x, it can pick up a 1x here. This is the only other area. There's not many areas we can get 1x's around this track that easily, but this is one of them. Yeah, utilising the most we can without the 1x. I think I could have stayed on the left side a bit more and then turned in from the side, but I ended up not quite using the circuit as well on this particular lap. But yeah, for sure, staying on this curb all the way down in the straight line, getting on the brakes again, coming up the hill. Again, the brakes aren't that heavy here because it's going uphill braking. Getting that light trailing pressure. Again, really late apex, tight to the curb, not hitting it. Key factor about this track. Running then wide, open the car steering wheel up, let the car run out wide. You can use all of the runoff here and use that to your advantage. Then fighting the car back over to the right hand side. Then ready for this next left. Really, like, not too heavy, mid-range pressure braking, quite late, quite early into the trail pressure because it gets unloaded and easy to lock the wheels. But for sure, late apex, you can see it. This apex, not what we want. We want to avoid that part of the apex and come into the late part apex, which is around about here, and then we can get that throttle on, open that wheel up, and then let the car run out wide. And you can use this curb and concrete as you're on the run on the exit and straighten up off of it, and you can bounce off the edge of it and then run down here towards the jump. Okay, so as we approach the jump, we're pretty much flat all the way through this section, keep it nice and pinned, smooth steering input as we can, and then we're kind of straightening the wheel up as we go through this curve to then try and go a little bit to the left. And then what I'm looking for is then to try and be on the far left side of the circuit, just before the crest and the jump. Okay, the jump here, we want to get on the brakes just before the jump. I have just broke on the crest of the jump, which is then really, one, it's affected me not slowing down enough. I had a little lock up as obviously when they landed, but as well now I've run in a little deep and a little hot, and ended up running a little wide of this curb. So just something to note, I didn't really want that to happen, but I'm not a million miles away. Maybe an aspect of just using the brake just before the jump is about key. Far left side of the circuit, turning in, getting nice and tight to this curb if we can, unlike my lap, nice and tight here, and then you run a little wide away from it, but you don't want to run massively wide. You don't want to run all the way out here because you want to come back into this late apex of this second curve. Okay, you want to then come back into this curve and then come over in this area of track, so you can then turn into this left flat out. Okay, if you end up running a bit wide through the middle here and then with too much speed and you start running out wide here and then up on this left side of the circuit over this direction, it's then impossible to get through this next left with any speed possible, right? So staying tight and finding this apex here is key. Try and stay to the right here nicely so you can turn into this corner flat out on the throttle. You can touch a bit of curb there. It's not great, it's a bit awkward, but it doesn't kill you. You can use it. Just be careful about using too much, but for sure you can use a little bit of it. Using all the track on the exit. And then here, this is really important. I completely cocked this up on this lap as well, so let's have a look why I cocked it up. But we want to turn in to the blind crest nice and early, but avoiding the curb. I've hit this curve here and it's bounced me, and it's actually lifted the front end up off the floor, and it's thrown me across the right hand side of the circuit, and now I'm in a real pickle for a situation for these next corners. So I don't want that to happen, so you want to turn in a little bit later than I have, okay? But making sure you're nice and tight to this white line, but not hitting the curb, so you can then stay to the left like my mouse is doing, and then you can pretty much, it is, by the way, flat out all the way through here as well, by the way. From the time you get the throttle on off this corner now, after the jump, it's flat out all the way through here, keeping to the right as we mentioned, flat out through this left, as we mentioned, as long as the line is correct, okay, and then flat out through here, but avoiding then touching the curb like I've done on this lap, staying to the left hand side as much as we can, still flat out in the throttle, then turn into this corner flat out the throttle. Obviously this lap I've lifted a little bit because of my awkward line and entry that I've made with this tight line that I've ended up having, so yep, not quite right, but yeah, it is 100% flat out. Over here, turn in early, avoid the curb, do not hit that curb if we can avoid it, and then straighten up. And here, you can hit the curb if you wish, just make sure you got a straight steering wheel when you hit it, okay? Do not have steering wheel turned when you hit this curb, otherwise it will properly hurt you. Just try and make sure as you get towards this curb, because you will be running wide off of the exit of this corner with speed, okay? The car will push you wide of the exit, but then once you get to this curb, just straighten your wheel, just pop the car up on the curb a bit and then just let it bounce back down. You'll be fine, okay? And then through here, just flat out all the way, okay? So coming up to the final sectors now. As we come up here, I've broken a little bit early on this particular lap, I feel, but again, it's probably a common theme, breaking a bit earlier than later, just to avoid any problems or lockups, especially as it's so late in the lap now. I didn't want to mess this one up, but for sure, braking nice and hard here, mid to high pressure, and then bleed down nice and early to get plenty of grip, because you want to use this camber of the road to pull you round, okay? Carry good speed here. This is awkward because you think, I want to stay to the right hand side to make sure I can open up this corner ahead of us. But I think I've slowed it down a little bit too much, and I've been able to get the car on the far right a bit easily, okay? I'm not saying it's wrong for this corner, but it means I've lost a bit too much time behind me, okay? So I would suggest actually carrying a little bit more speed, avoiding the curb as well if we can, a little bit more speed, and the car pushing a little bit wider, only by like a wheel width or two, okay? And then yes, it's a little bit more awkward through this next corner, okay? But the time gained behind you by carrying more speed is almost outweighing what we can gain through here, okay? But yeah, key thing, missing this curve on the inside. This really do not want to touch this curve on the inside, but we can open that steering wheel up, let it run wide, use the curb on the exit here though. Yeah, you can let the car jump up on that curb, use the concrete if you wish, and then jump back down before the grass, and then sitting it on the curb just before we're then turning in, light mid pressure braking, turn in really early here. We do not want to turn in late, we want to turn in nice and early, okay, and then catch the carousel. So we want to get into the carousel just as we get into this. The car will really grip and turn really well, which we can release that trail brake and get on that throttle, and then get that throttle on, and then really we actually don't want the car to jump out and run really wide. We just sort of want to jump out into the sort of mid to right side of the mid part of the corner, okay, on the exit. So now coming up to I think one of the second hardest corners, apart from that other hard corner that I mentioned earlier, in the mid sector. But this one's really difficult too. It's a very similar style. So here we come up to this corner. We want to go off the throttle, tiny bit of trailing brake, get this first apex, then on throttle as the car then runs out wide, pushes you to the left side of the circuit, and you're on the far left side of the circuit on that throttle, and then as you get on this far left side of the circuit, then off the throttle again, maybe a touch of trail brake if you need it, but I think just off throttle is fine, just to get yourself back into this curve and then back on the throttle nice and early, nice and hard, okay, and really aggressive, and then let that car then wash out wide on the exit and push you all the way out to this far side of the circuit on near the grass, okay. But it is key, if you let's say running too slow through here and your car is too slow and you end up in the middle of the circuit, it actually makes it harder for the corner ahead. You want the car to be running out wide here, so you need to be carrying speed through this corner for the car to run wide here, but also too much speed will run you onto the grass, and then you're going to as soon as you hit the grass, you're just going to end up in the barrier, which is a real pain. That's happened to me a couple of times also, okay. And right at the end of the lap as well, it's really painful when that happens. But for sure, as we come up to this area, we want to be on that far left, so we can then release out that throttle to turn into this, okay. Again, if you turn in a bit too late, it's really easy to miss this curve, miss this sort of curbing on the right hand side. We don't want to hit the curb if you can avoid it, really. Again, similar story as at most places on this circuit, but getting nice and tight to it and getting the throttle down nice and hard, nice and early is key for a good exit. Track usage and hard early throttle, okay. And then yeah, flat out all the way down here. I don't think there's much to say about this, but I think this is the most distance we can carry without talking about too much. Okay, let's have a look. So we come up to the Bilstein Bridge, and then from here, yeah, it's flat out, not too worried about using the far right side circuit. Nice and tight to the curve, and then let the car rush out wide with using minimal steering and put it easily flat out. Don't worry, it's no problem. This is where it then starts getting tricky. You can go flat all the way through these two corners ahead of you, so you can go turn into this flat out, keep the steering wheel as straight as possible, like minimal steering input as possible, and you can go flat through here, okay, and then release and then start braking around here, okay. But when you try and do that, it's sometimes quite easy to start then overusing the brake with more pressure, and then you start locking up, and it's very easy to then end up overshooting the corner, especially in this car, okay. So I found it a bit easier to just sort of flat out through this first kink left, and then just release out the throttle before you get to this curve, and then start applying your brake as you got past it, because if you try and brake through it with this sort of steering input on at this point, the car's really loose at high speed, so try and get through the corner without much throttle input, then straighten your wheel up and then get on the brakes. And then it's trying to make minimal steering inputs while braking, and trying to use the brakes at a high percentage when the steering wheel is straighter, and then trying to limit the brake pressure when you're steering when you're using the steering wheel. Okay, so for likes here, I've limited the pressure down a little bit as we've curved through this part, and then as I straighten my wheel up now. And then get into this straighter part of the track, we then utilise a little bit more brake pressure at this point. Just while we're in a straighter line. I know the car's not completely straight, it's a little bit out of shape, but then being able to then bleed off to then get the car to turn in for this last part and slow enough. We don't want to be overshooting this with too much speed and missing this curb. We need to be, oh, this is another key thing as well, sorry, I need to mention, sit the car in the middle of the track at this point, and then try and then turn into this tarmac area. Use the tarmac area that is off the track, basically on the other side of the white line, so we can sit this car on this left side of the circuit, so we have more width ready for this corner. Allows you to carry more speed. Okay, I got a little bit out of shape here, so it's looking a little bit awkward, to be honest with you, but it worked quite well. Got the car trailed down and slowed down, and you have to make sure you get it slowed well enough to get up onto this curb using this concrete part of the curb, okay, and then be a little bit slow so you don't run majorly wide off the exit. We don't want the car to be pushed all the way out to the curb. We need to have a little bit of space between you and the curb on the exit, so you can then turn into the curve flat out. Okay, I do not want you to be like up against the white line here, because then you're going to have to lift to make sure you get through this corner without having a problem, or you're going to have to turn in early and bounce over the curb, and that curb's going to probably bounce you across and hit you into the wall anyway. So you've got to be really careful there. So make sure you're a little bit slower on the exit of the corner, so you can stay a little bit tighter on the exit, so you can then just turn into this curve flat out, and then we got a nice flat out section down to the start finish straight. And that is a lap. Okay, I hope everybody has enjoyed this hour long, I'm sure it's more than an hour long, yeah, just over an hour and 10 minutes lap review of the full Nürburgring. I hope it's helpful, and I hope this recording has worked. All the best for the race, and I hope this helps people out. All right. Um, what I might do as well is do a recording of just the lap itself without any talking over it, just so everyone can have a reference to look at full speed. All right. Catch you later. All the best. Bye bye.